Geoff, thank you so much for joining FF News' coverage of Sibos 2022. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks for having me.
Well, Geoff, it's an absolute pleasure, but last time we spoke, there was a very similar theme. Back in 2019, we were talking about macroeconomic changes in trade. Now, a lot has changed since then, but the issues still remain the same. So how did you work with your clients through supply chain issues, through the trade finance changes? How was Bank of America there for your customers?
You know, as you said, the environment is always changing. I think, you know, what we believe, and I think what we've seen is the trade finance offerings, particularly around supply chain finance and payables and receivables finance, have proven themselves to be useful through different economic cycles. So I think the most important thing for us is to be able to continue to provide those solutions regardless of what the economic environment is. So I think, you know, as we got through COVID and sort of now we go through the post-COVID landscape, I think, you know, the mission for us was to be able to continue to provide for our clients using the products and services that we know have been validated through those different economic cycles, and continue to do that. And I think the story there has been good. And then the other responsibility I think we have is to prepare to do more as we go forward. And as we know that we have gotten through this last period, just anticipate what comes next and be able to go through the next period.
Amazing. Now, banks are typically the first people to change, the first organizations to change to any structural challenges, regulatory changes. Bank of America is no different. You always stay at the forefront. What have been the structural changes to finance in the last 3 years since we've seen each other? And how has Bank of America weathered that storm and come out further ahead than anyone else?
I think that the thing that we always have to remember is what our core values are, our core competencies. So, you know, as structural changes happen around us, as the environment changes around us, we need to know what we continue to need to do. So as a banking institution, we lend to our clients. We also provide them goods and services. So how we've adapted and how we've changed is really sort of, it's part technology, it's part regulatory oversight. We very much recognize that we live in a regulated bank environment. So what we do is we bake that into everything we do from the start. So if there's new products or new delivery models that we're using, you know, regulatory oversight is a part of that from the beginning rather than something we layer in at the end. And the more we can make our clients aware of that, the better we can help them to sort of work with us in that regard as well. So I think ultimately, structurally, we still do what we do, but we do it within a changing landscape. So we have to be, you know, in the US, whether it's the Federal Reserve or whether it's Basel or international regulators, we always have to be conscious of what we are asked to do and how we're asked to do it, and we play within those boundaries and serve our clients and continue to serve them.
Absolutely amazing. Now, trade finance, obviously, there's so many players within every transaction. Digitization, as a result, has probably come to this segment of finance slower than maybe others. We've talked at Sibos previously about digitizing trade finance. Are we ever actually going to get there?
It's a great question, and I think inevitably we have to get there. I think the really good news, I think, is you are starting to see small transactions being done in the industry. So there are digital transactions being done, and I don't know that 5-10 years ago we could have said that. There were ideas and there were really good use cases being developed, but we didn't have transactions in the world. And I think now that we start to see that, we can build off that a little bit. So I think, you know, the digitization process comes with the elements of the already existing transactions and relationships, and also as new ways to do the things that we had done historically. And I think the first thing you need to do is you need to do something, right? So we had a little bit of collaboration, we had a little bit of input and resource investment from the fintech community, from the large software companies, from the banks. And what we have now is a, you know, albeit a small volume of transactions, we've got a volume of transactions that are being done digitally, being done through DLT and blockchain. And I think that's a start to being more digital. So I think if the landscape was going to show that to be further away, you wouldn't see that trickle happening now. So I'm glad to see that we've got some progress, and then now the mission is to build off that progress.
I mean, that's absolutely incredible to be able to see those transactions actually go through and see like that. There's a British idiom, the proof is in the pudding. And so with that in mind, what is next for Bank of America? How are you guys going to continue thriving in this space and ensure your clients are always served?
It's a great question. Two things. One, we want to see innovation develop because it's a better landscape for everyone. At the same time, we feel like as Bank of America, we have a responsibility to be on the forefront of this innovation to a large extent. And the reality is, in many ways, it's not something that we do for Bank of America, it's we do this because the landscape will be better. This will be a better delivery model for our clients and even for the landscape of bank providers. If it's going to work for Bank of America, it's going to work for the banking landscape, and that's why we have a responsibility to do our bit to move this along. And I think that's what's next for us. What's next for us is, whether it's for the good of our clients or for the greater good of the industry, that's where we're going to put our resource of investment.
I mean, I think that's so fascinating knowing that you have this, this momentous change in the industry. If Bank of America moves that way, the industry is going to pay attention. So all the eyes are on you guys, and you continue to innovate. I love it. So we're here at Sibos 2022. What's caught your eye? What trends have you seen? Maybe one that's actually taken you aback?
I think the interesting things that we're seeing is, first and foremost, I see just the interest in the different elements of transaction banking that are reaching different levels of the corporate landscape. So you see the large tech companies getting involved in doing things like creating indexes and dashboards for information that we'll use as banks. And you hadn't seen that level of involvement, I think, a few years ago, but now these are actually useful things. These are things that provide information that is useful, predictive data in some cases, for all of the banks that are using sort of these platforms to do transaction banking. So when we think about that, we think about the input that we're getting, it's not just from the bank community and the sort of software community, but it's also from corporates who are investing in this stuff. We see platforms and fintechs popping up, and I think those are all good. And I think the most compelling thing is when they are collaborating with larger software companies, and you see all of that different energy coming together to create something that we haven't seen before. So I think that's what we've seen at Sibos this year, which has been really interesting.
See, that is fascinating to me. A decade ago, we were talking about fintechs taking the market share. 5 years ago, maybe the tech giants, and now the dialogue is just collaboration between all three partners. Geoff, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great to have me. Thank you.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.